Hello and welcome. I'm Suma Katauka and you're watching the China Report on News 6 World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. China urges U.S. to stop official exchanges with Taiwan. China has firmly opposed to any form of official exchanges between the U.S. and Taiwan and has urged the U.S. to stop official exchanges with Taiwan and refrain from sending any signals towards Taiwan's independence. China's President Xi Jinping has met with French President Emmanuel Macron in Beijing, marking Macron's fourth state visit, as Europe seeks to rebalance economic and security risks with China, as the leaders are to hold yet another meeting tomorrow. Meanwhile, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has met with French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot in Beijing, stressing that this visit will deepen strategic cooperation and boost the China-France comprehensive partnership, as French Foreign Minister reaffirmed that both must jointly uphold global stability as UN Security Council members. Hong Kong fire relief work progresses while 7 of 8 blocks have been destroyed, which was home to 4,000 people. And now the death toll is 159 people, while 31 people are still missing, as per local police reports, while Hong Kong orders scaffolding netting to be removed at 200 sites nationwide. Beijing has accused Taiwan's DPP of stripping mainland spouses of their rights after Taiwan spokesperson Zhang Han said the party opposed a KMT proposal to protect these residents' political participation, as China warned that it would hold Taiwan independence forces accountable. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has said that China is on track to complete its 12 million ton soybean purchases under the U.S.-China trade deal by February 2026. The European Commission has unveiled new measures to cut the bloc's heavy reliance on Chinese metals, including possible mandatory diversification rules and faster deployment of trade tools such as anti-dumping. The plan seeks to boost EU economic security after current geopolitics expose their supply chain vulnerabilities. Singapore's top court has upheld a $10,820 fine against the Workers' Party chief Pritam Singh, dismissing his appeal after he was convicted of 2 counts of giving false testimony to a parliamentary committee investigating Raisa Khan's lie. Justice Stephen Chong ruled that Singh delayed addressing the falsehood. Now for this hour, we start with French President Macron's visit in China, as French President Emmanuel Macron has received a formal welcome from Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing, marking the second day of his 3-day state visit to China. The two leaders have attended an official ceremony before beginning talks expected to focus on securing a ceasefire in Ukraine and addressing increasingly complex trade relations. During their meeting, Macron told Xi that France and China must overcome their differences in order to achieve effective multilateralism. Let's listen in.
Nous avons beaucoup de voies de convergence, nous avons parfois des désaccords, mais nous avons la responsabilité de savoir les dépasser, de trouver des mécanismes de coopération, de règlement des différends pour un multilatéralisme efficace auquel
Macron's visit comes at a pivotal moment as Europe navigates the challenge of balancing economic dependence on the world's second-largest economy with growing security concerns. This trip marks Macron's 4th state visit to China. He began his journey with a tour of Beijing's Forbidden City and is scheduled to meet Xi again on Friday tomorrow in Chengdu, Sichuan province, as discussions continue on regional stability, trade, and Europe-China relations. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Andrew K.P. Long. He's an independent China strategist, joins us live from Hong Kong. Thank you very much, Andrew, for joining us again. Good to see you. Andrew, now looking at this, how do you analyze China and France's relationship now, and what do you see coming moving forward?
Well, President Macron is facing a lot of pressure domestically and politically, and his party is losing influence. And then there is a rising dissatisfaction amongst his constituency. Externally, France is also facing serious challenges over Ukraine as the so-called peace deal between President Trump and President Putin is seen to be forcing on the European countries to accept them in spite of the generally perceived to be conditions favorable to Russia. President Macron would like to take this opportunity perhaps to ask for help from Beijing to put pressure on Russia so as to broker a better deal for the resolution of the Ukraine war. However, China and Russia, the economies have been intertwined long before the Ukraine war. Russia has been the world's largest exporter of energy and agricultural products, particularly fertilizers, and China has always remained the world's largest customer. So I don't think that Beijing would stop this relationship. And of course, Beijing does not support Russia's invasion because the invasion is seen to be in violation of a treasure principle of Beijing, which is territorial integrity. After all, Ukraine is a country recognized by the United Nations. So I think that Beijing is trying to tread a thin red line while maintaining the close relationship with Russia, but also trying to distance itself from the Ukraine war. But China, of course, wants peace over Ukraine, but is unable or unwilling to be the instrument or the key instrument. But however, China is prepared to perhaps buy less oil from Russia, for that matter, from other countries, because over 50% of China's electric supply is now accounted for by green energy. Now, as for the economic cooperation, of course, there is a great opportunity for both China and Russia. China is now pivoting towards domestic consumption rather than a problematic over-reliance on exports, which of course is also subject to tariffs and sanctions. But the growing China's economy, of course, a main driver would be import from good quality products from other countries. Yeah, because there is no lack of products produced by Chinese companies within China. So I think that opens up a lot of opportunities for French consumer goods, even perfumes, wine, or French food, and other French products. But as for geopolitical relationship, again, all the European countries, because of the increasingly aggressive and coercive stance of their long treasure transatlantic ally, which is the United States, which has proven to be both unpredictable and less reliable. So all European countries, and France, of course included, would like to recalibrate the relationship with China geopolitically, economically, financially, and also on people-to-people exchanges.
Yes, thank you for addressing that. Andrew, please stay with us as we stay on this topic now. Now, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has met with French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot in Beijing as well, as preparations intensify for French President Emmanuel Macron's upcoming fourth state visit to China. Wang Yi, who is also a member of the Political Bureau of the Communist Party of China Central Committee, has emphasized the significance of the frequent high-level exchanges between President Xi Jinping and President Macron, noting that each meeting draws substantial international attention and plays a key role in shaping China-France relations. He has said that amid complex global challenges, China and France, as major countries and permanent members of the UN Security Council, must strengthen communication, deepen cooperation, and jointly shoulder their responsibilities in safeguarding global peace and stability. Wang has also elaborated on China's position regarding recent remarks on Taiwan by the current Japanese leadership, calling them erroneous and dangerous. For his part, Barrett has conveyed President Macron's strong commitment to advancing France-China relations. He has expressed hope that Macron's visit would further strengthen bilateral ties and deepen people-to-people exchanges. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Mr. Andrew K.P. Long. He's an independent China strategist, joins us live from Hong Kong. Thank you very much, Andrew, for staying with us. Now, how should China adjust its long-term strategy towards Europe as EU members reassess their economic dependence on China and seek greater security resilience?
I think that the presidency and of course all the Chinese people have seen the world becoming much more multipolar. Gone are the days of the unipolar moment after the Second World War, when the United States called the shots on everything. Because at that time, after the war, Europe was devastated. And then there were the so-called victors, the United Kingdom, France, they're also in great debt. And of course, after the war, China was all full of problems. And then Japan was a defeated country. And so the whole world became a unipolar world dictated by the United States. But now this unipolar moment is now past. The United States is much less able to call the shots on everything. This is highlighted in particular in relation to China, which has risen to become the world's second largest economy and has now found a very effective countermeasure against the United States unipolar coercion, particularly on rare earths, and also using China's power as the biggest customer of American soybeans, which affect the political stronghold of President Trump's constituency. So I think that this is now, the world is becoming more multipolar, and of course China cannot stand on its own. China is an export-oriented country, needs a lot of partners. China, of course, is the largest manufacturer, the world's largest manufacturer, and the world's largest trader by far. China has now become the largest trading partner to 128 countries around the world, compared with only 58 for the United States. But because of Trump's tariff war, China is pivoting towards the global south as well as Europe, and of course including important countries like France and Germany and other European country powers. Now, as far as the unipolar world is concerned, and the multipolar world is concerned, President Xi is now calling attention to the partnership between China and France during the Second World War, and fighting against fascism, fighting against militarism, but President Xi wants to form a closer relationship with President Macron, so that China and Europe could be the force for good to promote a more multipolar world order, not so much beholden to American unilateral coercion.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Mr. Andrew K.P. Long for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving the focus to Taiwan, Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te has said that China's economy is under strain and that President Xi Jinping should foremost prioritize economic improvement over any move towards territorial expansion. Lai Ching-te's remarks come as China continues to increase military and political pressure towards Taiwan, which rejects Beijing's territorial claims. Speaking at the Deal Book Summit, the Taiwanese president has also highlighted the performance of Taiwan's economy, saying it is expected to grow more than 7% this year. Meanwhile, he has also added that global financial assessments show that China's growth forecast is just slightly above 4%, which indicates a weaker economic outlook for the Chinese mainland. Lai Ching-te has also stated that Taiwan is willing to assist and cooperate with China to address regional economic challenges, but he did not elaborate on any possible steps or initiatives. There has been no immediate response from China's Taiwan Affairs Office to these recent statements made by Lai Ching-te at the Deal Book Summit. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Mr. Andrew K.P. Long. He's an independent China strategist, joins us live from Hong Kong. Thank you very much, Andrew, for staying with us. Now, looking at all this, does Taiwan's strong tech-driven growth and offers of regional economic cooperation affect China's approach to strategy towards Taipei?
Beijing's strategy towards Taipei has been extremely consistent because is defined by the One China policy upheld by the United States, many countries around the world, and the United Nations. Also enshrined by an Anti-Succession Act enacted in China decades ago to forestall against any unilateral declaration of independence. And of course, Beijing is improving and doubling down on its military deterrence against that sort of eventuality. But of course, at the same time, Beijing's strategy is towards a peaceful unification, enshrined in 3 white papers issued during the past 2 decades, the last coinciding with the provocative visit of Nancy Pelosi to China. All these 3 white papers stress the preference for peaceful unification, driven, as I said, explained by military deterrence, economic and diplomatic isolation, and also increasing people-to-people exchanges. After all, the 2 countries, the 2 places, belong to the China throughout history, One China throughout history. The sovereignty of Beijing over Taiwan dated back to the Ming Dynasty in the 1400s. So the people-to-people exchanges, both people using the same language, the same culture, the same customs, and then this would promote a better understanding between the 2 peoples. As tourists from mainland China visiting Taiwan, many Taiwan tourists are visiting mainland, and as right now, even the numbers have decreased. As many as 300,000 Taiwanese, together with their families, are working and living on the mainland on their businesses. And there are more and more opportunities opening up in China for on the Chinese mainland for Taiwanese. So I think that the momentum is now set as less and less countries recognize Taiwan. And then with this military deterrence, so Taiwan sees itself increasingly isolated. The latest remark is rather twisted because, of course, China has not embarked on any territorial expansion, unlike other countries. It's never conquered or occupied the land. It's not fought. Only 1 or 2 wars since the People's Republic of China was founded, and the wars basically on defense. For example, the Korean War, defending its national security. It's never occupied other countries. Then for the Taiwan leader to ask Beijing to concentrate on the economy. Of course, this was Beijing's priority. But then I think that this remark is intended to divert attention from the separatist movements in Taiwan, because the leader elected in Taiwan now is a known separatist. And this remark is just calculated to muddy the waters and divert attention.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Mr. Andrew K.P. Long for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news as an independent China strategist. Thank you very much. Now, moving the focus to U.S. and China relations, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has expressed optimism about the economy at the New York Times Deal Book Summit, saying that he expects conditions to improve next year, but he still believes the Federal Reserve will need to cut interest rates pointing to softening sectors like housing. Besant has also said China is on track to meet all of its commitments under the U.S.-China trade agreement, including the purchases of 12 million metric tons of soybeans, which he expects will be completed by February 2026. On trade policy, Besant has credited President Donald Trump with normalizing the idea of a broad 15% to 20% global import tariffs and voiced confidence that the U.S. Supreme Court will uphold the legality of Trump's sweeping tariffs imposed under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. Besant has also said that the tariffs have strengthened U.S. negotiating power and argued that they are not driving inflation, noting that China has lowered export prices to offset their impact. Now for this discussion, we welcome Dr. Jayant Menon. He's a senior fellow at IC's Yusof Ishak Institute, joins us live from Singapore. Thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to NewsX World. Good to see you again. Now, looking at this, what impact could these statements made by Besant have for China-U.S. relations, and as well as people in U.S. looking forward to legality of tariffs right now?
So the whole issue about whether Trump's use of these various emergency powers is legal or not remains an open question. I think the important point here is that whatever the ruling is, the Trump administration will find new and more reliable ways of implementing their preferred tariff and trade policies. So I think it is quite unlikely that the Supreme Court, which is stacked with his nominees holding the balance of power, will rule against him. This is a very sad indictment on a otherwise, highly respected institution, but these are the times that we live in. But I think there will be different ways in which Trump's administration will implement these tariffs, even if in the unusual event that these tariffs are ruled to be illegal and firms are then entitled to compensation.
And Dr. Jayant, how do you think, how is this broad U.S. import tariffs in the range of 15 to 20% reshaping global trade dynamics and economic alliances now?
Okay, so I think there's two things. One is the current rates of tariffs, which is all over the place. Almost every country has a different rate. Even countries that have a deficit of the U.S. have a 10% tariff. That's the only common tariff that exists. Otherwise, it's country by country, and this is all impossible to implement in a world of global supply chains. So if you must have tariffs, then it's best to move to a uniform rate so that you don't need to worry about where a product comes from, because it's basically impossible when it comes to manufactured goods, right? Elaborately transformed manufactures are often made in between 10 to 50 countries. So, applying the country-specific tariff requires you to identify its origin, which is almost impossible. But on the general point about whether we move away from the current to the 15-20%, this whole trade policy has basically reversed 80 years of good economic diplomacy by the US in the first 80 days of Trump's administration, and for no good reason. This claim that these tariffs are justified because of unfair trade practices in every country, basically, is simply not true. There are cases where there's a need to look more closely at various non-tariff barriers and subsidies and infringements on international property rights. These occur not just in China or in other developing countries, but they also, subsidies are widespread in the US and the EU. But there is a case to be made for reviewing these sorts of infringements. But this, blanket assertion that everyone is cheating us and so we need tariffs to correct our trade balance doesn't hold water. And I think the US will not achieve its objective of reducing trade deficits with this instrument. It might induce a recession in the US, which will reduce deficits, but that's a hollow victory.
Yes, and Dr. Menon, how might China's strategy of lowering export prices to offset US tariffs, how do you think this is affecting long-term competitiveness and global supply chain dynamics?
Well, firstly, I don't think China is reducing its export prices to any great extent and across very many commodities. They did reduce their export price of steel during the first Trump administration to try and preserve market share. But they had a lot of room to do that because of the subsidies that they enjoy at home. But now this assertion by the US administration that China's eating these tariffs is not supported by any evidence, right? Prices are rising already in the US and they will continue to rise. This is just the early stages of the tariffs kicking in. So I think the first point is that this is simply a claim that hasn't found too much empirical evidence to support it.
Yes.
And longer term, I think, we'll have to see how supply chains adjust. They will adjust because the gap with China, the tariff between China and other countries will be large enough. And that will, I think, be partly wasteful and will not really be useful for global welfare.
And lastly, what impact could China's fulfillment of its trade commitments, such as the soybean commitment that Scott Bessent has emphasized on, have? And also, what could happen if it does not satisfy that? And what are the effects then on future US-China economic negotiation? Do you think they will go back to Trump and Xi just tit-for-tat tariffs?
I think China has been trying its best to avoid an all-out trade war. You cannot blame them for retaliating when, the US has unilaterally imposed these tariffs. But China needs to import soybeans, and the US is a very important market for China still, right? So I think they will try and comply with as much of the deal as possible when it's especially in their interest. I mean, trade is mutually beneficial. China has to buy soybeans from somewhere, and buying it from the US will, at the moment, simply return it to where it was before all of this second trade war escalation occurred. So I think they have every interest to try and comply. But if the US administration comes up with new unreasonable measures, then I think we have seen that China will not just sit back and accept it.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much.
They will indeed retaliate, yeah.
Yes, indeed. With that, I would like to thank Dr. Jan Menon for joining us today all the way from Singapore and sharing that insight. Now we move on to our next news. NVIDIA has said that its newest artificial intelligence server can deliver 10-fold jump in performance on some of today's most popular models, including 2 from China. The company has released new data showing the gains come as the AI industry shifts from training huge models to serving them to millions of users, an area where NVIDIA faces stronger competition from AMD and Cerebras. The results focus on a mixture of experts' models, a technique that assigns parts of a question to different experts within the system. The approach has surged that since China's DeepSeek surprised the AI world with a highly efficient open-source model earlier this year. It's now used by OpenAI, France's Mistral, and China's Moonshoot AI. NVIDIA says its new server, packing 72 of its top chips into one machine, speeds up Moonshoot's Kimi K2 thinking model by 10 times over the previous generation. The company credits the dense hardware design and fast links between chips. Rival AMD plans a similar server next year. And that's a wrap on the China Report. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.